Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm meteorologist Mike Ottenweller, and you have turned into your Alaska weather, brought to you by NOAA and the National Weather Service. Tonight, Tuesday, September 25th. Hope you're all having a great day. As you need to get in touch with us, 1-800-472-0391, and that'll get you to any of the 3 offices across the region, Anchorage, Fairbanks, or Juneau. If you want to check out our website online, weather.gov/Alaska. And again, you can see any of the 3 offices, and we encourage you to use the point and click option just to keep clicking into your local area or wherever you want the forecast for. The tighter you click in, usually the more up-to-date the forecast is, or the more accurate the forecast is. And then if you need to email the weather desk here at the TV office, nws.ar.tvweather@noaa.gov, and Mr. Dave Snider will get back in touch with you. So let's jump into our headlines tonight. Veniaminof volcano had a low-level eruption, and we got some good images of that, and there's some images on the FAA webcams, so we'll talk about that a little bit more. It's not much of a concern other than for aviation at this time, but there is a special weather statement and a marine weather statement out for the possibility of some very trace amounts of ashfall throughout parts of the Alaska Peninsula near Perryville. Rain continues for the southeast portion of the state, and we'll talk about that in detail here with our maps. And quieter weather is going to resume for much of mainland Alaska for the middle portion of the week. And then warm and sunny conditions are going to really return to a lot of south central and southeast Alaska, even the interior, throughout the middle portion of the week. So let's dive in, and you can see here on our hazards map, unlike the last couple evenings where we had those winds, we have diminished all of our hazards across the state. Even southeast Alaska is all quiet at this time. So we'll jump forward, and this is an overnight picture, and you can see here not the greatest of images, but I encourage you to go onto the FAA's website and check out their Perryville Northwest webcam, and there you'll see the eruption. This is a little bit of the magma and the volcano activity from last night, overnight. You can see right there in the orange, that is the overnight eruption, and then again it continued through much of the daytime hours, allowing the drift over to the east with the mid-level winds at about the westerly direction, and so we saw that eruption, and it's been continuing through much of the day up to about 12,000 feet above sea level. So be advised that that is going on, and stay tuned in for any further updates. For our satellite imagery, well, you can see here down by the volcano, flow is fairly light and to the east, but for the most part, the moisture stream is really the big story here. Let's go ahead and loop that again, and you can see here on the visible just how much moisture. It doesn't even look like it's moving because it's a very stationary amount of moisture just kind of flowing from southwest up to the northeast, and with that just really reinforcing not overly heavy rain, but certainly some moderate steady rain across southeast Alaska, primarily stretching south of Yakutat and north of Ketchikan, so kind of right in the heart of the Sitka and Juneau area. Up towards south central Alaska, we've really seen things clear out for the most part after yesterday's event, and much of that moisture is now stuck along the Alaska Range and across interior portions of the state. So some showers firing from southwest Alaska up through the Yukon Valley, and then even up along the Brooks Range we still have some lingering low clouds. Not a whole lot in the way of precipitation, but some lingering low clouds up there. You can see those a little bit better here on our infrared imagery. Some of that low clouds, maybe an isolated snow shower, but nothing really heavy to write home about. And otherwise, just clearing skies across much of southwest Alaska outside of those showers. South central, same story for you. And then down towards the Alaska Peninsula, pretty clear down there as well. The other system that is in our area is this feature out here, out over the Bering Sea, and that is a gale force front with gale force winds running south to north. Pretty strong system, but it's going to run into this area of high pressure that's keeping things relatively quiet for much of the Bering, and because of that, this system is not going to be able to run very far to the east. So much of those southwest southerly gales will stay confined to the central and western Aleutians. So how does that look on our surface map? Well, this afternoon, there is that system out there. It just started raining out at Shimya Erickson Air Station this afternoon. And that system is down at 994, so not incredibly strong for a September system, actually fairly moderate strength for this time of year, but does have some good gale force winds on the front side. Across much of the Bering, clear skies is really the story, other than some just patchy marine stratus, really. And then we have those patchy fog and some showers as we get to southwest Alaska. Up along the interior portion of the state, that's kind of where we have our dividing line between the cold and warm air, and some showers continuing along that line with the lingering moisture from yesterday's area of low pressure that moved through. Some light snow showers up along the Arctic coastline, and otherwise some fog up there. Down towards southeast Alaska, that's where the real story is. This area of high pressure is going to continue to build to the north, but this moisture is just going to ride up and over it. So lots of warm air underneath this, but steady precipitation will continue at least through the next couple days. How's that looking to tonight? Well, steady precipitation continues. As you can see there, this stationary boundary is not going to move a whole lot, henceforth the name stationary boundary. And then this warm front is going to serve to reinforce that warm, moist air off into southeast Alaska. That warm, moist air is also going to produce some fog over southwest Alaska, possibly even up into the Cook Inlet region as high pressure starts to settle in. Nothing real strong, but 1,027 is decent strength for a high pressure this time of year. And then our stationary boundary up along the northern portion of the state is seeing some showers continuing. Rain showers to the south and snow and rain mixed showers to the north. Again, another night of freezing fog along the Arctic coastline with some snow showers up near Point Lay. Our system remains out over the Bering, down a little bit to 993, and that is going to continue to bring some rain and wind out to the western Aleutians. Then on into Wednesday, that rain is going to continue, and now the system has started to drift just a little bit further north. We kind of have this as a warm front. It's kind of an inverted trough is one of the meteorological terms we use to call it, but really what it is a sharp turn in the winds from both directions. We've got south winds on the south side and then kind of northeast winds on the north side, and so lots of warm air underneath this. This ridge is fairly strong, and that's really helping to reinforce that precipitation across the area as it rides up and over that area of high pressure. Over the interior portion of the state, calming conditions on Wednesday with just a few showers. Nice clear skies and fairly warm air for much of Wednesday across southern Alaska. And then our system remains out over the western portion of the Bering. And then on into Thursday, kind of the same story with more precipitation pushing into southeast Alaska. More on the northern side now as opposed to the southern side. This ridge is really going to start to build in. Help to dry you guys out a little bit for Thursday. Bring definitely some warming conditions, but some of that precipitation now starting to creep back into south central and the Copper River Basin. Won't quite make it as far north as the interior, as you guys will have a nice dry day and fairly warm day up there on Thursday. Just some spotty snow showers along the Arctic coastline. Our system out over the Bering Sea continues to be fairly strong at 989, but a slow mover and starting to see those winds come down just a little bit as the gradient relaxes. So for Wednesday morning, our low temperatures, you can see here right in the upper 40s to low 50s expected across southeast Alaska. A little bit cooler with clear skies into the low 30s across south central, low 40s for southwest, and in the low 20s for the Brooks Range. For highs on Wednesday, expect temperatures in the upper 50s across much of southern Alaska, southwest Alaska, low 50s, and then around the mid 30s to low 40s for the northern portion of the state. On into Thursday morning, expect lows down into the upper 40s and generally going to be in the mid 30s to low 40s unless you're up in the Arctic or up northern portion of the state where you'll see temperatures dropping into the mid 20s. And then Thursday afternoon, rebounding nicely with temperatures warming across much of the state until those clouds start to spread back in, bringing a little bit cooler air.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
All right, let's take a look at your flying weather forecast now for Wednesday morning. And as you can see here, with all that moisture hung up across southeast Alaska, plenty of instrument flight rules conditions throughout this area, mainly stretching from Yakutat down through Ketchikan, but plenty of lower ceilings and visibility courtesy of all that moisture pushing into the mountainous terrain. MVFR conditions across the northern Gulf, and then a little bit more of the IFR as you get towards Kodiak Island with that neck system starting to push in there with northeast flow that really helps to bring down their ceilings. Some pockets of IFR against the southern portion of the Alaska Range as that wet weather pushes up against those areas as well. And then as you look towards the northern portions of the state, some moisture pushing up against the Brooks Range, helping to create pockets of IFR up there as well. MVFR across much of the state with that lingering moisture and not a lot of flow. And then as we get towards that system out over the western Bering, helping to bring southerly flow and pushing moisture into the central Aleutians and the western Bering. As we get into Wednesday afternoon, we'll see this pattern where the mornings are a little bit worse and the afternoons are a little bit better. So expect improving conditions, especially in those lower visibilities from fog in the morning, to improve during the afternoon. So that's why we see less in the way of MVFR conditions and IFR conditions, but still some pockets of IFR conditions up near the Brooks Range. South Central clearing out nicely and southwest Alaska doing the same. Southeast Alaska, not so much the same story down there with IFR conditions continuing. IFR creeping up closer to the edge of Kodiak Island, and then MVFR spreading out with high pressure out over the Bering, so plenty of marine stratus, and then again our system out over the western Aleutians, creating IFR conditions there. Here we go on Thursday morning. We see those conditions drop back down again. IFR conditions throughout much of the northern half of the state. Up along the Arctic coastline, expect MVFR conditions, and those will trickle all the way down the coastline until you get to about the Kuskokwim Bay and Bethel area, and that's where we have another pocket of IFR conditions. Some pockets of IFR conditions from low ceilings and visibility in there near Bethel and just north of Dillingham. As we get out towards the Alaska Peninsula, IFR conditions there as that area of inverted low pressure starts to bring some more moisture. And then again, our system out over the western Bering helping to keep IFR conditions out there. Starting to see things improve a little bit by Thursday morning for Southeast Alaska, and then they improve a little bit more Thursday afternoon as some drier air works in. Plenty of IFR conditions, though, associated with that next system across the southern half of the map. And then as we get towards South Central, some pockets of patchy fog through the morning hours across Cook Inlet, but those should be dissipating by the afternoon. And then we do have some expected MVFR conditions developing along the Brooks Range and continuing along the Brooks Range and along the Arctic coastline there. As we get into the passes now, and the Tuvik Pass, IFR becoming MVFR on Tuesday. Adigan will be IFR becoming MVFR. This should be Wednesday. Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR, and late in the day we expect those VFR conditions to develop. And then as we look at rainy, IFR conditions becoming VFR, again, late in the day there, it's going to be a slow burn off of some of this moisture without a lot of flow in the area. Same story for windy. And then Isabel will be instrument flight rules improving to marginal visual flight rules. Mentasta, MVFR becoming VFR, and Tanita Pass, IFR becoming VFR through the day as well. Portage, MVFR improving to visual flight rules, and Chilkoot and White are going to see a transition from instrument flight rules up to visual flight rules as that area of lower pressure drops to the south. So are we looking for freezing levels? Well, throughout the state, pretty warm air still pushing up into the Gulf here. 12,000 foot freezing level late September. That's pretty unusual. We do have some pockets of surface freezing temperatures here in the Copper River Basin, stretching out over towards the Susitna Valley. And then, of course, once you're north of Fairbanks, some surface freezing levels expected up there north of the Brooks Range as well. But otherwise, areas of about 6,000 feet across southern mainland and 4,000 feet out over southwest Alaska. How does that look on our icing map? Well above general aviation interest here, above 10,000 feet for most folks flying through this area, but still plenty of isolated moderate icing across this area. Much of the mainland looking pretty good with no icing really expected there, and then some more out along that next system. For our jet, we can see it coming in from west to east and dropping down in support of that area of low pressure that is developing over the North Pacific, and then moving in, helping to push that precipitation and moisture in at 150 knots from west to east across southeast Alaska. So the two areas that I really want to draw your attention to are this area down here where there's this sharp turn in the winds from southwest to northeast and then northeast back to southwest at about 50 to 60 knots. So a pretty rough ride through here, and then another strong area at about 60 knots at 9,000 feet coming up from south to north. Pretty light winds across the state with generally westerly flow over the northern portion and northeast to southwest flow over the southern portion. Similar story there at 3,000 feet, westerly flow across much of the interior, and then northeast offshore winds with that sharp turn expected there in the northern Gulf. So our turbulence map, well, pretty quiet across the mainland and southeast Alaska. We just see that area below 10,000 feet there in the Gulf, and then a few spots with some considerable moderate along the Aleutians.
Dual polarization technology is a major upgrade to the current radar system. It allows forecasters a better idea of what's actually out there and can help keep you safe.
Current radar technology transmits and receives information in the horizontal direction, which is very limited. Dual polarization technology, in addition to the horizontal, transmits and receives vertical energy, which allows forecasters to get information about the size, shape, and phase of the precipitation. We can use that information to better determine the precipitation type to expect at your given location.
There you have it. This new technology is currently being installed in radars across the country and is already being used by National Weather Service forecasters to produce better, more accurate forecasts. Learn more here and follow us. Want to know about the future of weather radar? Well, the National Severe Storms Lab has it here with its new phased array radar. Let's check it out.
It's a non-moving radar. It has 4 faces of the antenna, each pointing in different directions. One of the big advantages is that we're seeing so far, it can sample the area around the radar in less than a minute, maybe even a half a minute. And this is 5-6 times faster than what they can do today.
NSSL is leading the development of future weather radar with this project. Learn more here and follow us. The Storm Prediction Center is one of the NOAA weather partners. They are located in the National Weather Center in Norman, Oklahoma. Greg Carbon gives us a glimpse into what the SPC does.
Our mission is to analyze and forecast severe thunderstorms and the potential for tornadoes, large hail, and damaging winds from those thunderstorms across the lower 48 states, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. One of the primary missions of the Storm Prediction Center is the issuance of severe thunderstorm and tornado watches across the country when conditions appear to be coming together to support the development of severe thunderstorms and tornadoes.
The world-class meteorologists in the Storm Prediction Center specialize in severe weather and keeping you safe. Learn more here and follow us.
The National Severe Storms Lab is working on increasing the lead time for severe weather warnings. The national average for tornado warnings is currently 13 minutes, but more notice would be helpful, especially for those in charge of moving large groups to shelter. Warn on Forecast will help forecasters issue hazardous weather warnings earlier. The project will give them more info about the chances of strong winds, large hail, and even tornadoes.
Currently, warnings are created by forecasters looking at the atmosphere outside, understanding its volatility, and then comparing that to how they see the Doppler radar presenting what's going on inside thunderstorms. Warn on Forecast is an idea where we're going to take the massive amounts of satellite, radar, and surface data and stick them all into a very high resolution prediction model. And then by producing new forecasts every 15 or 20 minutes, the forecasters hopefully will be able to use that model to produce warnings that extend out to an hour.
Before the National Weather Service can use this tool, it must be developed and tested. One big challenge will be deciding how to get the model predictions to the forecasters.
I'm going to keep this one very low. I'm just adjusting the track.
These hazardous weather prediction models are going to produce a huge amount of output. And this fire hose of data is just too much for forecasters to handle in real time quickly. So in order to help deal with that, NSSL has developed a related project called Facets. And Facets is the methodology which will enable forecasters to focus very quickly on the most important threats.
Once Warn on Forecast and Facets are proven to be reliable and effective, then forecasters will be better able to inform you of threats nearby. Learn more here and follow us.
The Hazardous Weather Test Bed is located at the National Weather Center in Norman, Oklahoma. It is used for experiments that will allow forecasters to learn and apply new technologies.
The Hazardous Weather Test Bed is a really unique space throughout all of NOAA. And this is where the researchers and the operational folks come together in a common space to solve operational problems and to test new research tools that the research community is working on. The goal is to accelerate the transfer from research to operations of the newest tools and techniques.
People come from around the world to collaborate on this unique project.
We can bring together not only NOAA people, but also university people, faculty, researchers, private sector meteorologists, folks working in other countries in meteorology, forecasters can all come together and focus on what the problem of the day is with the forecasters.
Each spring, several experiments occur in the hazardous weather test bed. Learn more here and follow us.
What are you looking at? And what are you ignoring? Did you notice the NOAA logo in the corner? Forecasters have a lot of information in front of them too. Every second counts during severe weather, and decisions about where to focus are constantly being made. This could be even more challenging in the future. Phased array radar will produce 4 to 6 times more information than what we have now, which brings us to the question researchers are hoping to answer. Will more radar information affect forecasters' decisions?
From our past experiments, we've learned a lot about how forecasters think during the warning decision process, but we've also learned that those thought processes are very complex, and for that reason, we need a better way to be able to track forecasters' cognitive activity.
Inbounds and possibly golf ball sized hail.
An eye tracker is a piece of technology that is used to determine in real time where someone's eye gaze is located. And these eye trackers are typically video-based, which means a camera sits below a computer monitor, and with infrared light and vector analysis, we can determine where a person is looking and how their eyes are moving.
Eye tracking is already being used in the medical field and air traffic control. Using similar research methods, NSSL is discovering the benefit for weather forecasting too. Phased array radar will give forecasters a lot more to think about. Understanding their decision-making process will help researchers develop even more user-friendly tools. So what's the benefit for you? Even better weather warnings. To learn more, check us out online and follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
All right, now it's time for the latest marine forecast and sea ice analysis. And as of today, September 25th, you can see here the sea ice just growing ever so slightly along the main ice pack and along this area here in the Beaufort Sea. Just seeing some growth in the marginal ice pack in this blue area here, and then again in the blue area along the main pack. Expect that growth to continue according to the ice experts Mary Beth Schreck and Mike Lawson, and we should see that all the way into the weekend when some stronger winds will help to break up the ice a little bit more so. On into the forecast now for southeast Alaska on Wednesday, your marine forecast. Expect Lynn Canal to come out of the north, 20 knots, seas at 4 feet. And then as we get down to Stevens Passage, you can expect 15 knots out of the north and seas at 3 feet. And then down by Clarence Strait, 15 knots out of the south and seas up to 6 feet. So be advised there, a little higher seas. For the Gulf, southern waters are going to be 20 knots to 25 knots out of the west at seas at 11 feet, but then more northwest and northerly winds as we see that frontal boundary kind of dividing this area, 10 to 15 knots there and seas 8 to 9 feet. On into Thursday now. Most of the inner passageways have gone out of the north or northwest, 10 to 15 knots, and seas between 2 to 3 feet. And then for the open waters, expect westerly winds again over the southern portions of the Gulf, 15 knots and seas at 8 feet. And then easterly winds for the northern portions of the open waters, 15 to 20 knots and building from 8 feet near Gustavus all the way up to 12 feet southwest of Yakutat. As we get into south central on Wednesday, you can expect fairly calm conditions, just about 10 to 15 knots of offshore flow across the inner passage, the protected waters there, 10 to 15 knots, and seas about 2 to 3 feet for the Cook Inlet and Prince William Sound. A little bit stronger off flow near the Copper River Basin and south of the Prince William Sound, 10 to 15 knots out of the northwest, seas 7 to 8 feet. And then as we look towards Cook Inlet and the Barren Islands, northerly winds 10 to 20 knots and generally about 5 to 6 foot seas. On Thursday for South Central, expect northeast winds across all of Cook Inlet and down to the Barren Islands, 20 to 30 knots, and seas climbing from 5 feet up to 10 feet, and that's because of that area of low pressure and that inverted trough that we talked about down there south of the Kodiak Island. As we look down towards the Barren Islands, 40 knots out of the southeast there for the eastern portions, and seas building up to 14 feet. And then over towards the northern portions of the Gulf, more of an east wind, 20 to 35 knots, gale force along the coastal areas, and that seas will be 4 feet in Prince William Sound, but 11 to 12 feet in the open waters. Now towards Kodiak Island and the Alaska Peninsula, expect a northeast wind, again courtesy of that inverted trough, 20 knots north of the peninsula, but about 35 to 40 knots south. And Shelikof is going to be 7 feet, but then building up to 15 feet there as you get south of Sand Point. And then on into Thursday, as that frontal boundary starts to slide through, it'll help bring winds around from the south and southeast, 20 to 30 knots, and seas all the way up 12 to 16 feet. Shelikof is going to remain out of the northeast, as they often do, at 35 knots, gale force winds, and 11-foot seas, so a pretty rough day for marine traffic there. And then north of the peninsula, 25 to 30 knots out of the east, and seas 5 to 7 feet. How about for the Aleutian chain on Wednesday? Expect northeast and northerly winds for the eastern portion of the chain at about 10 to 25 knots, seas between 4 and 8 feet. But then as you get closer to this frontal boundary with the gale force winds, anywhere from 25 up to 40 knots, and seas all the way from 5 feet up to about 13 feet. And then on into Thursday, as that frontal boundary continues to bisect the area, east winds east of it and west winds west of it, southerly winds right along it, and those are going to be anywhere between 15 and 35 knots, seas anywhere between 5 and all the way up to 17 feet well out towards the western Aleutians. On Wednesday for the west coast, expect west winds over the Norton Sound, 15 knots, seas 2 feet, but then a little bit more variable winds, 15 to 20 knots off the west capes, and those are going to be seas all the way from 5 to 13 knots, or 13 feet, and seas between winds between 15 and 20 knots. That's what I'm trying to say. And then easterly winds resume for Thursday, 25 to 30 knots, and seas generally between 6 and 8 feet. Along the Arctic coastline for Wednesday, expect a westerly wind 10 to 15 knots, seas about 1 to 3 feet. Fairly calm conditions up there, pretty quiet weather, and a little bit more variable here off the northwest capes, anywhere between 10 and 20 knots, and seas between 4 and 5 feet. And then on into Thursday, a southwest and west wind, 10 to 20 knots along the Arctic coastline there, and then a little bit more southerly, and then finally easterly, 10 to 25 knots there, and seas anywhere between 2 feet up to 8 feet there near the Seward Peninsula. So recapping the weather, we can see that moisture streaming into southeast Alaska, and that's going to be the big story for that area for the next couple days. Venmianov, a low-level eruption to about 12,000 feet, and that continues to be active, so monitor that. As we go into the next couple days, wet weather will continue for southeast Alaska while we dry things out over the mainland, and then our next system approaches on Thursday, helping to spread wet weather back to South Central. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.